Magnetic you. The science of being unforgettable. You've been invisible your entire life. Not literally. People see you. They just don't remember you. What if that's costing you everything? Last Tuesday, you pitched brilliance. Your boss nodded. By Thursday, she credited your idea to someone else. The room agreed. You sat there erased. What makes certain humans unforgettable? Not louder, not prettier, not luckier. Science has the answer. And it's teachable. Why charisma isn't genetic. What happens in someone's brain 0.3 seconds after meeting you? Why be yourself is terrible advice and what works instead. The promise. 12 weeks from now, you walk into any room and people feel you arrive. This audiobook rewires how others perceive you, permanently. Let me tell you about Sarah. Brilliant software engineer, 10 years at a major tech company, never promoted past senior developer. She'd watch people with half her technical ability get tapped for leadership roles while she sat in the same cubicle, invisible. Her code was pristine. Her deliverables were always on time. Her performance reviews used words like solid and dependable. Those are the words you get when you're competent but forgettable. Sarah couldn't understand it. She'd go to meetings with carefully prepared insights, but somehow when she spoke, conversations would just keep rolling past her contribution like water around a stone. 3 months later, a newer team member would say essentially the same thing she'd said, and suddenly it was a brilliant observation worth implementing. Sarah started to wonder if she was losing her mind. The truth is, Sarah wasn't losing anything. She'd never had it in the first place. And neither have you, probably. Most of us haven't. We move through the world creating almost no wake. We interact with dozens of people weekly, and by the following Tuesday, they've forgotten we exist. This isn't cruelty. It's neuroscience. Your brain and the brains of everyone you meet are constantly making split-second decisions about what to encode into memory and what to discard immediately. The vast majority of human interaction gets discarded. We are forgettable by default. The human brain evolved to conserve energy, and remembering every interaction would be catastrophically inefficient. So your hippocampus, the part of your brain responsible for forming new memories, uses a very specific filter. It encodes novelty and emotion. That's it. If you're not novel and you're not creating emotional resonance, you don't get remembered. You get deleted. Harvard Business School conducted an 18-month study tracking 2,400 professionals across multiple industries. They wanted to understand what predicted career advancement better than technical skill or work output. They found something remarkable. The single strongest predictor wasn't competence. It wasn't hours worked. It wasn't even measurable results. It was memorability, specifically how vividly managers and colleagues could recall interactions with that person 3 days after the fact. The researchers called it presence resonance. People who scored high on presence resonance were promoted at 3 times the rate of people who scored low, even when controlling for every other variable. When the researchers asked decision-makers why they'd chosen one candidate over another for advancement, the answers were almost comically vague. She just has something. He really stands out. I feel like I know her, even though we've only spoken a few times. These weren't rational assessments of skill. They were memory traces. Strong, vivid, emotionally coded memory traces. Columbia University ran a similar study specifically on romantic partnerships. They tracked over 1,000 first dates and followed up to see which ones led to second dates. Physical attractiveness mattered, but not nearly as much as people assumed. The correlation was weak. What mattered was something the researchers initially struggled to define. They kept hearing the same phrase from participants. They were really present. I felt seen. The conversation had energy. Eventually, they codified it as emotional contagion combined with attentional focus. The people who got second dates were the ones who made their date feel something during the interaction and who demonstrated they were fully engaged. Not performing engagement, actually engaged. The study found that 76% of second date decisions could be predicted by this presence metric alone. So what does this mean for you? It means you're leaving opportunity on the table every single day. That networking event where you handed out 20 business cards and 90% of them ended up in the trash within 48 hours. That was wasted time. That creative idea you mentioned in the meeting that got ignored until someone else said it. That was you being erased. That job interview where you had all the right qualifications but somehow the less experienced candidate got the offer. That was the memorability gap. When you're forgettable, you pay a tax. The tax accumulates slowly, almost invisibly. Until you look up one day and realize you've been working twice as hard as other people for half the recognition. You've been having the same conversations over and over because people don't retain what you said the first time. You've been spinning your wheels professionally and socially while watching others advance with what seems like effortless momentum. Children are never forgettable. Have you noticed that? A 5-year-old walks into a room and everyone remembers the interaction. Why? Because children haven't learned to calibrate their behavior for social acceptance yet. They're authentically, sometimes painfully themselves. They express emotion without filtering it. They say exactly what they're thinking. They ask questions without worrying whether the question makes them look stupid. They move their bodies without self-consciousness. They laugh when something is funny and cry when something is sad. Adults find this exhausting, but they also find it magnetic. We remember children because children haven't learned to be boring yet. Now, I'm not suggesting you need to act like a 5-year-old. That would be insufferable and inappropriate. But there's something crucial here. You were born magnetic. Somewhere between childhood and now, you learned to suppress the very qualities that made you unforgettable. You learned to modulate, to fit in, to not make waves. You learned politeness and professionalism and reading the room. All of those skills have value. But you may have overcorrected. You may have sanded off so many edges that you've become smooth, frictionless, forgettable. Let me walk you through a quick audit. Think about the last significant conversation you had at work or in a social setting. Really picture it. Who was there? What was discussed? Now answer honestly. How much of that conversation did you dominate versus how much did you listen? If you're like most people, you probably spoke for somewhere between 20 and 40% of the time. That's normal. That's polite. That's also potentially part of why you're forgettable. Not because you need to talk more, necessarily, but because when you were speaking, how present were you? Were you fully inhabiting your words, or were you simultaneously monitoring yourself, wondering how you were being received, planning your next comment, feeling vaguely anxious about whether you were saying the right thing? That divided attention creates what I call the gray zone effect. You're there, but you're not really there. People can sense it, not consciously, but their mirror neurons pick up on your disconnection and they disconnect too. Mirror neurons are clusters of brain cells that fire both when you perform an action and when you observe someone else performing that action. They're the neurological basis for empathy and social learning. When you watch someone smile, your mirror neurons fire as if you were smiling. When you watch someone experience pain, your mirror neurons fire as if you were in pain. This is why watching a skilled athlete can make your muscles twitch slightly in mimicry. It's why watching someone cry can make you tear up. It's evolutionary social glue. But here's the critical part. Mirror neurons don't fire for bland, neutral interactions. They fire for emotionally salient ones. If you're going through the motions of conversation, if you're performing politeness without genuine engagement, other people's mirror neurons stay quiet. No firing means no emotional resonance. No emotional resonance means no memory encoding. You've just had an interaction that will be forgotten within minutes. Your vocal presence is probably undermining you right now, and you don't even know it. Record yourself speaking for 60 seconds. Just pick up your phone right now and talk about your day or your work or anything. Then listen back without looking at the screen. Just listen. On a scale of 1 to 10, how magnetic is that voice? How much does it vary in pitch? How often does it speed up or slow down? Where does it pause? Most people listening to themselves for the first time are shocked by how monotone they sound. We hear ourselves from inside our own heads, where everything sounds richer and more dynamic because of bone conduction. Other people hear something much flatter. If you're speaking in a narrow frequency range without much prosodic variation, you sound like background noise. Wallpaper. You could be saying something genuinely interesting, but the delivery makes it forgettable. Margaret Thatcher understood this. When she was preparing to become Prime Minister, she hired a vocal coach because she knew her natural speaking voice was too high-pitched to be taken seriously in a male-dominated government. She systematically lowered her pitch by practicing daily exercises. Silence is a tool most people are terrified to use. We fill every pause with filler words. Basically. These are verbal tics that signal cognitive processing, but they also destroy your authority and memorability. When you're constantly filling silence, you're training people to tune you out because the ratio of meaningful content to filler noise is low. Master speakers use pause deliberately. They'll make a significant point, then stop talking for 2 full seconds. That silence creates space for the listener to process and react. It also creates slight tension, which sharpens attention. Most people are so uncomfortable with silence that they'll rush to fill it, stepping on their own impact. Practice finishing a sentence and then closing your mouth. Count to 3 in your head. Notice the urge to keep talking. Resist it. The pause will feel interminable to you and perfectly natural to your listener. Reading aloud daily is the fastest way to develop vocal presence. Pick anything, poetry, news articles, fiction, and read it out loud for 5 minutes with exaggerated prosody. Make it melodramatic. Vary your pitch wildly. Speed up and slow down like you're performing for an audience. This feels absurd at first, but it's building muscle memory. You're expanding your vocal range so that when you speak normally, you have access to more variety. Most people's conversational voice operates in maybe 20% of their available range. They've compressed themselves into a narrow, safe, forgettable bandwidth. Reading aloud with theatrical exaggeration gives you permission to explore the other 80%. Eventually, some of that expansion will bleed into your natural speaking style, and you'll become significantly more engaging without even trying. Your body is already telling everyone who you are before you say a word. Proxemics, the study of personal space and distance, reveals that how close you stand to someone communicates relationship, status, and intention. Edward T. Hall identified 4 distance zones. Intimate distance, 0 to 18 inches, is reserved for close relationships, romantic partners, family, very close friends. Personal distance, 18 inches to 4 feet, is for friends and casual social interactions. Social distance, 4 to 12 feet, is for professional interactions and acquaintances. Public distance, 12 feet and beyond, is for public speaking and formal addresses. Most forgettable people unconsciously default to social distance even in contexts where personal distance would be appropriate. They stand too far away, creating psychological remoteness, or they violate norms by standing too close too quickly, triggering discomfort and withdrawal. Cultural variation matters enormously here. What's appropriate in Tokyo is invasive in Texas and vice versa. In many Latin American and Middle Eastern cultures, conversational distance is much closer than in Northern European or East Asian cultures. If you're interacting across cultures, you need to calibrate. But the general principle holds: forgettable people mismanage distance. They either keep everyone at arm's length, signaling unavailability and disconnection, or they don't respect boundaries, signaling poor social awareness. Magnetic people match distance to context and relationship stage. They start slightly outside personal distance and migrate closer as rapport builds, always attuning to the other person's comfort level. It's a dance, and like any dance, it requires leading and following. Gesture is another language entirely. Some gestures are emblematic, meaning they have specific culturally agreed upon meanings. Thumbs up, peace sign, the middle finger. These are essentially vocabulary. Then there are illustrators, hand movements that accompany and enhance speech. These are what most people do naturally when they talk. Pointing to indicate direction, spreading hands to show size, moving hands up and down to emphasize rhythm. Illustrators make you more memorable because they add visual dimension to your verbal content. Studies show that people recall information better when the speaker uses illustrative gestures compared to when they keep their hands still. The sweet spot for gestures is roughly waist to shoulder height. That's where they're visible without being distracting. Gestures above shoulder height start to feel theatrical or aggressive unless you're on stage addressing a large audience. Gestures below waist height are often invisible and wasted effort. Then there are adapters, self-soothing behaviors that signal discomfort. Touching your face, playing with your hair, rubbing your neck, fidgeting with jewelry or pens, adjusting your clothing repeatedly. Everyone does these sometimes, but when they become constant, they broadcast anxiety and undermine your presence. Adapters tell the other person that you're not comfortable, which makes them not comfortable, which means the interaction becomes something both of you want to escape. No memory encoding happens when both parties are just trying to get through the conversation. If you're prone to adapters, the solution isn't to try to stop them through sheer willpower during the interaction. That creates even more tension. The solution is to address your baseline anxiety before the interaction through breathing exercises, physical grounding, or cognitive reframing. Posture is identity made visible. The CEO stance, feet shoulder-width apart, weight evenly distributed, spine straight but not rigid, shoulders back and down, head level, is called that for a reason. It signals confidence, groundedness, and readiness. Compare that to the submissive posture, weight shifted to one leg, shoulders rolled forward, head tilted down, arms crossed or hands clasped in front of the body. That posture is trying to take up as little space as possible. It's apologizing for existing. Or consider the aggressive posture, weight forward on the toes, chest puffed out, shoulders up, chin jutting forward. That's looking for a fight, signaling dominance and threat. None of these postures is inherently better or worse, but they communicate different things. If you want to be memorable as confident and approachable, the CEO stance is your default. The wall test is a simple way to find neutral alignment. Stand with your back against a wall. Heels, butt, shoulders, and head should all touch the wall simultaneously. For most people, this is impossible at first. Your head doesn't reach back far enough because you've developed a forward head posture from looking at screens all day. Or your lower back arches away from the wall because your hip flexors are tight from sitting. Getting into proper alignment feels unnatural and even uncomfortable at first. Your body has adapted to misalignment, but proper alignment is how you were designed to stand. It's biomechanically efficient and it broadcasts confidence. Practice the wall test daily. Stand there for 60 seconds, feeling what proper alignment feels like, then try to maintain that alignment as you move through your day. How you walk into a room determines whether people notice you. There's a specific choreography to a memorable entrance. Pause at the threshold for 1 to 2 seconds. Don't rush in. That pause allows you to scan the room, make a micro-assessment, and most importantly, it signals that you're comfortable enough to take your time, then commit fully to entering. Walk with purpose, not hesitance. Eyes forward, not down at the floor or darting around nervously. Barack Obama was famous for this. He'd enter a space, pause, sometimes with his hands in his pockets, scan the room with a slight smile, make eye contact with a few people, then move forward. That pause communicated that he owned the space, not that he was waiting for permission to enter. It's a subtle status display that makes you instantly more memorable. Handshakes are cultural fossils, but they still carry information. Pressure matters. Too weak and you seem timid or disengaged. Too strong and you seem like you're overcompensating or trying to dominate. The right amount of pressure matches the other person's and lasts for roughly 2 to 3 seconds, about 2 to 3 pumps. Temperature matters too. Cold, clammy hands signal nervousness. Most people don't consciously register hand temperature, but it affects their gut feeling about you. If you have naturally cold hands, warm them up before interactions. Rub them together, run them under warm water, put them in your pockets. Eye contact during the handshake is non-negotiable. If you're looking away while shaking hands, you're telling the person they don't matter enough for your full attention. Your entrance and exit bookend the interaction, and the exit is what people remember most vividly. The peak-end rule in psychology says that people judge an experience largely based on how they felt at its most intense point and at its end. You could have a great conversation, but if you end it awkwardly, fumbling for words, backing away while still talking, or abruptly cutting off, that awkwardness is what sticks. A memorable exit involves signaling clearly that you're ending the conversation, giving a reason if appropriate, expressing something specific you enjoyed, and leaving cleanly. Something like, "I need to connect with a few other people before I leave, but I really enjoyed hearing about your work in renewable energy. Let's stay in touch." Then you extend your hand again, make eye contact, smile, and go. No lingering. No half-exiting while still talking over your shoulder. Commit to the exit the way you committed to the entrance. Now let's talk about the stories you're telling about yourself, because your identity is essentially a collection of narratives, and most people's narratives are putting their audience to sleep. Joseph Campbell mapped the hero's journey, the monomyth that appears in stories across. Let's say you're telling a story about switching careers. The boring version goes like this. I used to work in finance, but I wasn't happy, so I went back to school and now I'm a therapist and I love it. That's informative, but nobody will remember it. The hero's journey version. I was spending 60 hours a week building financial models and I was good at it. Made partner at 32. But I'd wake up most mornings with this feeling like I was suffocating. Like I was working for a future version of myself that I didn't even want to become. I ignored it for years. Then my dad got sick, and I spent 3 months watching him die. And one night in the hospital, he asked me, "Are you doing what you love?" I lied and said yes. He knew I was lying. After he died, I couldn't shake that question. It felt like he'd handed me something, and I had to decide whether to carry it or put it down. I put in my notice, applied to graduate school at 35, became the oldest person in my cohort. I was terrified I'd made a catastrophic mistake. 2 years in, I had my first client thank me for helping her through something I would have dismissed as emotional in my old life. That's when I knew I wasn't suffocating anymore. See the difference? The second version has stakes, emotion, transformation, and specificity. You remember it. The cold open is a technique borrowed from television writing. Instead of starting at the beginning, you start in the middle, at a moment of high tension or interest, then backtrack to explain how you got there. For example, I was standing in my kitchen holding a positive pregnancy test and a layoff notice, both received within 15 minutes of each other, thinking, this is either the worst timing in the history of the universe or the best. Now I have your attention. Now I can rewind and tell you the full story. Starting with, so I used to work at this company, would lose people immediately. The cold open hooks attention, then earns the right to slow down and provide context. Sensory details are the texture of memorable stories. Instead of saying, I was nervous, say, my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't get the key in the lock. Instead of, it was hot, say, the asphalt was melting under my shoes, leaving sticky black smudges. Instead of she was angry, say, she slammed the door so hard a picture frame fell off the wall and shattered. Sensory details do two things. They make the story vivid and imageable in the listener's mind, which aids memory encoding. And they demonstrate that you're not making this up. Liars tend to speak in abstractions because they're constructing a narrative from imagination, not memory. Truth tellers include random sensory details because those details actually happened and they remember them. Dialogue brings characters to life. Instead of saying, my boss told me I wasn't ready for promotion, give me the actual words. He said, you're doing great work, but you're not strategic enough yet. I asked what that meant. He couldn't explain it. Just kept saying I needed to be more strategic. It was code for something else, but I couldn't crack the code. Dialogue reveals personality, creates immediacy, and allows the listener to experience the interaction rather than just hearing a summary of it. Most people are afraid to use dialogue in their stories because they worry they're not remembering it exactly right. That's fine. You're not under oath. You're recreating the essence of the exchange, not providing a court transcript. The twist or revelation is what makes a story worth telling. Something has to surprise the listener or challenge their assumptions. The twist could be an external event, an internal realization, or a reframing of everything that came before. If your story is completely predictable from the first sentence, it's not worth telling. A good test: if you can replace your name with anyone's name and the story still works, it's too generic. Your stories need to be specific to you, your perspective, your particular constellation of experiences and insights. Generic stories are instantly forgettable because there's nothing unique to attach memory to. You need a rotation of signature stories. The origin story explains why you do what you do or why you care about what you care about. The failure story shows vulnerability and humanizes you. The triumph story demonstrates capability and gives people confidence in you. The value story reveals what you stand for under pressure. The quirky story shows personality and makes you distinctive. You should have these stories ready to deploy based on context. Job interview, origin and triumph stories. First date, quirky and vulnerability stories. Networking event, quick value story. The key is that these are stories you've told before, so you know they land, but you're not so rehearsed that you sound like you're performing. There's a sweet spot between unprepared rambling and overpolished presentation. Most people ruin their stories by ending with, "and I learned that," followed by some banal moral. Don't do this. Let the listener derive meaning. If you've told the story well, the insight should be obvious without you explaining it. Spelling it out insults the listener's intelligence and destroys the artistry of the story. It's like explaining a joke after telling it. Just end with the moment of transformation or the present-day consequence and stop talking. Let silence do its work. Now close your eyes for a moment. I want you to visualize something. Picture yourself walking into a room where you don't know anyone. Feel your feet on the floor, your weight balanced, your spine straight. You pause at the threshold. You're breathing slowly, deeply, your nervous system is calm. You scan the room with curiosity, not anxiety. You make eye contact with someone across the room, and you smile, a real smile that reaches your eyes. You walk toward them with purpose, your arms loose at your sides. You extend your hand, you say your name clearly. You meet their eyes. They feel seen. They feel something in your presence. You ask them a question about themselves, and you actually want to hear the answer. You're not thinking about what you're going to say next. You're not monitoring how you're coming across. You're fully present. The conversation flows. You contribute something, a story, an observation, that makes them lean in. Time passes. Eventually, you excuse yourself gracefully, leaving them with the clear sense that this was a conversation worth having. They will remember you. Open your eyes. That's not fantasy. That's available to you. It's a skill set, not magic. Conversation is where magnetism lives most of the time. You could have perfect vocal presence and commanding body language, but if you're a terrible conversationalist, you'll still be forgettable. Most people think they're better at conversation than they actually are. They confuse talking with conversing. Conversation is reciprocal, dynamic, co-created. Talking at someone while they wait for their turn to talk at you is not conversation. It's alternating monologues. Real conversation has flow. It has rhythm. It has moments where both people are building something together that neither would have created alone. There are levels of listening that most people never reach. Level 1 is waiting to talk. You're not really listening. You're just pausing while the other person makes sounds, and you're planning what you're going to say as soon as they stop. Most conversation operates at level 1. Level 2 is hearing words. You're actually processing what they're saying at the semantic level. You could repeat it back. That's better than level 1, but it's still shallow. Level 3 is understanding meaning. You're grasping not just the words, but the intent, the subtext, the thing beneath the thing they're saying. That requires empathy and imagination. Level 4 is feeling emotion. You're not just understanding intellectually that they're sad or frustrated or excited. You're feeling resonance in your own body. Your mirror neurons are firing. You're having a somatic experience of their state. Level 5 is anticipating need. You're so attuned that you know what they need next in the conversation, sometimes before they do. Should you ask a question, offer support, provide a solution, just sit with them in silence. Most people cap out at level 2. Magnetic people operate between levels 3 and 5. Active listening has become a buzzword, but most people do it wrong. They think it means nodding and saying, a lot. That's performative listening. Real active listening involves 3 moves: reflect, validate, expand. Reflect means you briefly summarize what you heard to confirm understanding. So, what you're saying is you felt dismissed in that meeting. Validate means you acknowledge the legitimacy of their experience or emotion. That makes complete sense. Anyone would feel that way. Expand means you open up the conversation to go deeper. What was most frustrating about it? These 3 moves demonstrate that you're engaged, that you're taking them seriously, and that you're inviting more depth. This is dramatically different from the typical conversational move, which is to relate everything back to yourself. Oh, that reminds me of when I stopped doing that. Not every story needs a matching story from you. Questions are invitations. The quality of your questions determines the quality of the conversation. Closed questions, the ones that can be answered with yes or no, are useful for clarifying facts but terrible for depth. Did you like the conference? Is a closed question. What stood out to you at the conference? Is an open question. Open questions invite elaboration. They give the other person space to think and share. The best questions start with how or why. How did you decide to make that change? Why does that matter to you? These questions. There's a technique I call the vulnerability spiral. Conversation depth often increases through matched self-disclosure. Someone shares something slightly personal. You match that level of disclosure with something from your own experience. They go a level deeper. You match. The spiral continues until you've both shared things that you wouldn't typically share in casual conversation, and now you have real connection. But if one person goes deep and the other stays shallow, the spiral breaks. The person who disclosed feels exposed and regrets it. They'll retreat. Magnetic people are skilled at reading where the other person is on the depth continuum and matching it, then gently escalating to see if the other person will come along. It's social calibration in real time. Not every conversation should be deep. Sometimes small talk is exactly what's appropriate. But magnetic people know how to transcend small talk quickly when the context allows. Instead of, how's the weather? Try, what's the best thing that happened to you this week? Instead of, what do you do? Try, what are you working on that you're excited about? These questions are still accessible and light, but they invite something more interesting than the standard script. People remember conversations where they said something they don't usually say. Difficult conversational moments are where most people either disappear or become aggressive, both of which are forgettable in bad ways. If someone interrupts you, the typical response is either to just stop talking and fade away, or to raise your voice and talk over them. There's a third option. Pause, let them finish their interrupting comment, then calmly say, "I wasn't finished with my thought. Can I complete it?" That's boundary setting without aggression. Most interrupters aren't even aware they're doing it. You've just made them aware. If someone dominates the conversation and you're fading into the background, you can reclaim airspace with something like, "That's interesting. I have a different perspective on this. Can I share it?" You're not attacking them. You're asserting your right to contribute. Disagreement is particularly challenging because most people have been socialized to avoid conflict, so they nod along with things they don't actually agree with. Then they're resentful, but they're also forgettable because they didn't stand for anything. Magnetic people are comfortable with calibrated disagreement. They can say, "I see it differently," without it becoming hostile. They can challenge ideas while respecting the person. The technique is to steelman the other person's position first. Steelmanning is the opposite of strawmanning. Instead of distorting their argument to make it weaker, you state their argument in its strongest, most charitable form, then explain why you still disagree. "I understand you're saying that remote work increases productivity because people have fewer distractions. That makes sense for certain roles. My concern is that it also reduces serendipitous collaboration, which is where a lot of innovation happens. I think we're optimizing for efficiency at the expense of creativity." You've shown you understood them, you've acknowledged the validity of their point, and you've introduced a counterpoint without being dismissive. That's memorable. That's someone who thinks clearly and can hold tension between competing ideas. Boundaries are the skeleton of your personality. Without boundaries, you're amorphous, shapeless, easy to ignore because there's nothing to bump up against. Boundaries tell people who you are by showing them where you end and they begin. When someone asks you to do something you don't want to do, most forgettable people say yes and then resent it. They've failed to set a boundary. Magnetic people can say no without apology or over-explanation. "No, that doesn't work for me," is a complete sentence. You don't owe anyone a justification for your no. Obviously, there are contexts where you need to be diplomatic. If your boss asks you to take on a project, you can't just say no with no explanation. But you can say, "I'm at capacity right now. If this is a priority, which of these other projects should I deprioritize?" You're not saying no directly, but you're making the trade-off visible and forcing them to make the decision. People test boundaries constantly, usually unconsciously. They'll push to see where the edge is. If you don't defend the boundary, they'll keep pushing until they're standing in the middle of your territory, wondering why you're so resentful. Someone who consistently violates your boundaries, shows up late, cancels plans last minute, asks for favors without reciprocating, needs to experience a consequence, or they'll keep doing it. The consequence doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be as simple as, "You've canceled on me 3 times. I'm not going to keep making plans with you." That's enforcement, that's clarity, and it's memorable because most people won't say it. Think about someone in your life who is consistently memorable. What is it about them? Chances are it's not just one thing, it's a constellation of qualities: presence, clarity, authenticity, energy. They seem more alive than other people. More there. When they speak, you listen because you know they've thought about what they're saying. When they're silent, the silence feels intentional, not awkward. They take up space without apology, but they also make space for others. They're comfortable being challenged. They're not trying to make you like them. They're being themselves, and you're drawn to that realness. Picture someone you find magnetic. Maybe it's someone you know personally. Maybe it's a public figure. What specifically do they do that creates that magnetism? Break it down. How do they move? How do they speak? What do they talk about? How do they handle disagreement? How do they make you feel when you're around them? Study them. Magnetism leaves clues. It's not mystical, it's behavioral. You can identify the patterns and adapt them to your own personality and context. Let me tell you about Michael. He was a mid-level manager at a pharmaceutical company. Smart, hardworking, completely invisible. He'd been passed over for VP 3 times. After the 3rd time, he asked his boss for honest feedback. The boss hesitated, then said, "You're solid, Michael, but you don't have executive presence." Michael asked what that meant. The boss couldn't articulate it. He just kept saying Michael needed to work on his presence. Michael was furious. It felt like a non-answer, a way of justifying nepotism or favoritism. But then he started paying attention. He watched the people who did get promoted. He noticed things. They spoke less than he did in meetings, but when they spoke, people stopped multitasking and looked up. They moved more slowly, more deliberately. They held eye contact longer. They told stories instead of presenting data dumps. They disagreed openly when they thought something was a bad idea, but they did it without being disagreeable. They asked big-picture questions, not detail questions. They laughed easily. They seemed comfortable in their own skin in a way that Michael realized he was not. Michael started experimenting. Small things at first. He slowed his speaking pace. He paused before responding instead of jumping in immediately. He started telling more stories in meetings, using the hero's journey structure, with himself or his team as the protagonist. He worked on his posture, did the wall test every morning until proper alignment started to feel natural. He recorded himself on Zoom calls and was horrified by his vocal monotony. So he started reading aloud every morning, news articles with exaggerated prosody, expanding his range. He practiced making eye contact for 3 full seconds with baristas, cashiers, anyone he interacted with briefly, to get comfortable with sustained eye contact. 6 months later, a VP position opened in a different division. Michael applied. He didn't have the most seniority. He wasn't the most technically knowledgeable. But in the interview, he was different. He was present. He told stories. He challenged one of the panel's assumptions respectfully. He held eye contact. He took up space. He got the job. The feedback from the hiring committee: Michael has real executive presence. Same phrase, different meaning now. He'd become unforgettable. When things go wrong, and they will, how you handle it determines whether you become more or less memorable. Most people try to pretend mistakes didn't happen, minimize them, or over-apologize until everyone is drowning in their discomfort. None of those strategies work. The paradox is that vulnerability, including the vulnerability of messing up, actually increases magnetism if you handle it right. There's research on this called the pratfall effect. Competent people who make minor mistakes are rated as more likable and more trustworthy than competent people who never make mistakes. The error humanizes them. It makes them relatable. But this only works if they're competent first. An incompetent person who makes mistakes just seems incompetent. So the formula is: demonstrate capability, make a human error, acknowledge it without spiraling, move on. Say you're giving a presentation and you completely blank on what you were going to say next. The room is silent, waiting. The forgettable response is to panic, stammer, apologize profusely, and visibly collapse. The memorable response is to pause, smile slightly, say something like, "Lost my train of thought completely. Where was I going with this?" Wait a beat, someone might help you or you might remember. If not, shrug and say, "Well, that's gone." Let me come at this from a different angle. You've acknowledged the mistake without making it a bigger deal than it is. You've shown grace under pressure. People will remember that more than whatever point you were trying to make. Apologies are tricky. Over-apologizing makes people uncomfortable and diminishes you. Under-apologizing makes you seem arrogant or unaware. The right apology is specific, brief, and non-defensive. I was late. I should have texted. I apologize. That's it. Not, "I'm so sorry, traffic was terrible, and then my phone died, and I couldn't find parking, and I feel terrible." The story is either an excuse or it's irrelevant. Just acknowledge the impact, take responsibility, and move forward. If you've genuinely harmed someone, a more extensive repair conversation might be needed. But for everyday social gaffes, brief is better. Humor is an incredible recovery tool. If you spill coffee on yourself right before a meeting, you can either try to pretend it didn't happen and sit there with a huge stain, which everyone will notice and no one will mention, creating awkwardness. Or you can walk in, gesture to the stain and say, "Started my day by attacking myself with coffee. It's going great." Everyone laughs, the tension breaks, and you've demonstrated that you don't take yourself too seriously. That's memorable. That's human. Obviously, there's a limit. If you make a serious professional error, humor is inappropriate. Read the room. But for minor mishaps, self-deprecating humor that doesn't spiral into self-flagellation is gold. Your online presence is now inseparable from your overall presence. For most people, the first impression happens online before you ever meet in person. Your profile photo, your bio, your content, all of it is communicating who you are. Most people's online presence is either generic or chaotic. Generic is forgettable. Chaotic is off-putting. Magnetic online presence has coherence. There's a through line, a voice, a point of view. When someone looks at your profile, they should be able to answer the question, who is this person and why should I care? In about 3 seconds, profile photos matter enormously. There's research on what makes a photo compelling. Eye contact with the camera, which simulates eye contact with the viewer, increases engagement. A genuine smile, the kind that crinkles the eyes. The Duchenne smile signals warmth and trustworthiness. Good lighting, which usually means natural light or soft artificial light, makes you look approachable rather than harsh. Context, something in the background that suggests personality or profession, makes you interesting rather than generic. The worst profile photos are poorly lit, awkwardly cropped, weirdly angled selfies, or stiff corporate headshots where you look like a hostage. Your photo should look like you on a good day, not like a different person. Your bio is micro-storytelling. You have maybe 150 characters to communicate who you are. Most people waste this with job titles and buzzwords. Passionate leader, innovative thinker, coffee enthusiast. That's everyone. That's no one. Try specificity. Rebuilt a failing sales team by focusing on listening instead of pitching. Now teaching others to do the same. That's a story. That's interesting. Or former lawyer who learned to code at 40. Building tools that make legal services accessible. You've communicated a journey, a skill set, and a mission in 2 sentences. That's memorable. The content you share is your extended personality. If all you do is repost other people's content with no commentary, you're a curator, not a creator, and curators are forgettable. If you only post promotional content about your work, you're an advertisement, and people scroll past advertisements. The sweet spot is a mix of original insight, personal story, useful information, and occasional vulnerability. You want people to feel like they know you, like they're getting access to how you think and what you care about, not just what you're selling. Engagement is where online magnetism is built. Commenting thoughtfully on other people's posts, sending DMs that aren't just networking requests, showing up consistently in spaces where your people are. These actions make you visible and memorable. But engagement has to be genuine. Copy-pasted generic comments are worse than no comments. Great post is noise. This point about X really shifted how I'm thinking about Y. Have you read Z's work on this? His signal. It shows you actually read the post. You thought about it. You're contributing to the conversation. That person will remember you. Video presence is its own skill set. The camera is unforgiving in ways that in-person interaction is not. Every uncertainty, every nervous tick, every moment of dead air is amplified. But it also allows you to reach people at scale. The fundamentals of magnetic video presence are the same as in-person presence, just adapted. Eye contact means looking at the lens, not at your own image on screen. Energy needs to be slightly amplified because the camera flattens effect. Pacing needs to be crisp because attention spans are short. The first 3 seconds determine whether someone keeps watching or scrolls. You need a hook. Start with a question, a surprising statement, a bold claim, something that makes the viewer want to know what comes next. Lighting for video is critical. If you're lit from below, you look villainous. If you're backlit, you're a silhouette. If the light is harsh and direct, you look washed out or shadowed. The best setup is soft light from slightly above eye level, ideally from a window or a ring light. Audio quality matters even more than video quality. People will tolerate mediocre video if the audio is clear. They will not tolerate good video with bad audio. Invest in a decent microphone. Your laptop's built-in mic is not sufficient. Camera angle matters. Shooting from below makes you look dominant, but can be unflattering. Shooting from above makes you look smaller and less authoritative. Eye level or slightly above is ideal. The camera should be at the height your eyes are when you're sitting or standing naturally. Background matters too. A cluttered background is distracting. A completely blank background is sterile. The ideal background has some visual interest, books, art, plants, but isn't so busy that it competes for attention. Now let's talk about group dynamics. Because most important interactions happen in groups. Meetings, social gatherings, conferences, and navigating groups requires different skills than one-on-one conversation. When you walk into a room where there's already a group conversation happening, there are invisible status hierarchies and social dynamics that you need to read quickly. Who's speaking the most? Who are people looking at when they speak? Who's being interrupted and who's doing the interrupting? Who's on their phone or laptop versus who's fully engaged? These are all status signals. The strategic contribution is how you enter a group conversation memorably. Jumping in too quickly with a random tangent makes you seem tone-deaf. Waiting too long to contribute makes you invisible. The sweet spot is to listen for a few exchanges, identify the thread of conversation, then add something that builds on what's been said. The yes and technique from improv is perfect for this. You validate what someone just said, then expand it. Yes, and if we take that idea further, what if we... This makes you a collaborator, not a competitor. You're enhancing the conversation, not hijacking it. Synthesis is a powerful group contribution that few people use. After several people have spoken and offered different perspectives, you can be the person who connects the dots. So, it sounds like we're all circling around the same tension, which is how to scale without losing quality. Sarah's point about automation and Mike's concern about customer experience are actually two sides of the same question. You've just demonstrated that you were listening to everyone, that you can think systemically, and that you can clarify complex discussions. That's memorable. That's leadership. Asking questions in groups is another high-impact move. Not rhetorical questions, not questions that are thinly veiled statements, but genuine curiosity-driven questions that make everyone think differently. What would have to be true for this to work? What are we assuming that might not be accurate? Who benefits from this and who bears the cost? These questions shift the conversation to a higher level. They also position you as a strategic thinker. Humor in groups is high risk, high reward. If you land a joke and everyone laughs, you've created a shared moment of positive emotion and you're the source of it. That's magnetism. If the joke doesn't land, there's awkwardness and you've lost status. The safest humor in groups is self-deprecating without being pathetic, or observational humor about something everyone in the room has experienced. Avoid humor at anyone else's expense unless you know them well and the group culture allows it. Facilitation is a role you can step into in groups even if you're not the official leader. The facilitator redirects when conversation gets off track, brings in voices that aren't being heard, summarizes key points, keeps time, and ensures the group accomplishes what it set out to do. Good facilitation is nearly invisible but incredibly valuable. People remember the person who made the meeting actually productive. Bringing in quiet voices is a specific facilitation skill that creates magnetism. In every group, there are people who talk a lot and people who barely speak. The people who barely speak often have valuable insights but aren't comfortable fighting for airtime. If you notice someone trying to speak and getting interrupted or overlooked, you can create space for them. Hold on, I think Jordan was about to say something. Jordan, what were you going to add? You've just done two things. You've made Jordan feel seen, which creates loyalty and connection, and you've demonstrated to the group that you pay attention to everyone, not just the loudest voices. That's leadership. That's memorable. Disagreement in groups is where most people either stay silent or become combative. There's a middle path. You can challenge an idea respectfully by framing it as curiosity or offering an alternative. I'm not sure I agree with that approach. Here's what concerns me. Then you articulate your concern clearly and offer a different path. You're not attacking the person. You're addressing the idea. This only works if your tone is collaborative, not adversarial. Voice matters. Body language matters. If your words are respectful but your tone is contemptuous, people hear the contempt. Memorable meetings and presentations follow story structure, not bullet points. Most people structure presentations as a list of information. Topic 1, Topic 2, Topic 3. The audience's attention flatlines. Instead, structure your presentation as a story. Start with the problem or the question. Build tension by showing what's at stake. Introduce obstacles or complications. Then offer a resolution or path forward. End with a call to action. This structure keeps attention because the human brain is wired for narrative. We remember stories. We forget lists. Visual aids in presentations are meant to support you, not replace you.
If your slides are so packed with text that people are reading instead of listening to you, you've lost them.
The best slides have minimal text, maybe one key phrase or image per slide. You are the presentation. The slides are just punctuation. Ending a meeting or presentation memorably means ending with something actionable and specific. Not, so let's all think about this, but here are the 3 decisions we need to make by Friday. Or, your next step is to email me your feedback by end of day tomorrow. Give people something concrete to do. They'll remember the meeting as productive rather than a waste of time, and they'll remember you as someone who drives toward outcomes. Think about the last meeting you attended. What do you remember about it? Probably not much unless something unusual happened. Most meetings are forgettable because they follow the same predictable structure, and no one does anything unexpected. What if you started a meeting by asking everyone to share one sentence about their current state of mind before diving into the agenda? That's a pattern interrupt. It's unexpected. It humanizes everyone. It shifts the energy. Small moves like this make you memorable. Consider how you're showing up in your own life. Are you present, or are you going through the motions? Are you saying what you actually think, or are you saying what you think people want to hear? Are you taking up space, or are you shrinking? These aren't abstract questions. They have concrete behavioral answers. Presence is behavioral. Authenticity is behavioral. Magnetism is behavioral. This means it can be practiced, refined, and mastered. You are not stuck being forgettable. You're choosing it, probably unconsciously, through thousands of micro-behaviors that signal to others that you're not worth remembering. What would it take for you to decide that you're done being invisible? Not in a desperate, needy way, but in a calm, determined way. What would change if you committed to becoming unforgettable? You'd start paying attention to how you speak, how you move, how you tell stories, how you listen, how you show up online, how you enter rooms, how you exit conversations. You'd get feedback. You'd watch yourself on video. You'd ask people what they remember about you. You'd experiment with being a little bolder, a little more honest, a little more you. Over time, probably over weeks or months, people would start responding to you differently. They'd remember your name. They'd reference things you said. They'd seek you out. They'd recommend you for opportunities. Your life would start to feel less like pushing a boulder uphill and more like being carried by momentum. Energy management is the foundation of sustained magnetism. You can't be unforgettable if you're exhausted, depleted, running on fumes. Sleep is non-negotiable. 7 to 9 hours for most people, not 5, not 6 with the rationalization that you're fine. If you're chronically sleep-deprived, your cognitive function is impaired, your emotional regulation is compromised, and your presence is diminished. You're operating in survival mode, and people can sense it. Let me be specific about what sleep deprivation does to your magnetism. After one night of poor sleep, your ability to read facial expressions drops by nearly 30%. You miss social cues. You misinterpret neutral expressions as hostile. Your reaction time slows, which means you're always slightly behind in conversation, responding a beat too late, missing opportunities to connect. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for executive function and impulse control, goes offline. This is why you say things you regret when you're tired. You have less filter, less capacity to consider consequences before speaking. Chronic sleep deprivation creates a low-grade irritability that colors every interaction. People don't consciously think you're sleep-deprived, but they register that something is off. You seem less warm, less engaged, less present. Over time, this becomes your reputation. The sleep audit is simple, but most people avoid it because they don't want to face the truth. For 1 week, track when you go to bed, when you actually fall asleep, when you wake up, and how you feel throughout the day. Most people discover they're getting significantly less sleep than they thought. They go to bed at 11 but scroll on their phone until midnight. They wake up at 6 but hit snooze 3 times, fragmenting the last hour of sleep. They feel tired at 2 in the afternoon and caffeinate instead of addressing the root cause. The pattern becomes clear. You're chronically undersleeping, then trying to compensate with stimulants, which disrupts your sleep the following night. It's a cycle that destroys presence. Here's a micro-challenge. For the next 7 days, commit to 8 hours of sleep opportunity. Not 8 hours in bed on your phone. 8 hours of actual sleep time. That means if you need to wake up at 6, you need to be asleep by 10. Work backward. If it takes you 30 minutes to fall asleep, you need to be in bed by 9:30. If your bedtime routine is 30 minutes, you need to start it at 9. Most people think they don't have time for this. You don't have time not to. Your magnetism depends on it. Track your energy and presence throughout the week. Notice the difference. Most people are shocked by how much better they feel and how much more easily connection flows when they're actually rested. Nutrition affects your mental state more than most people realize. Blood sugar crashes make you irritable and foggy. Chronic inflammation from processed food affects mood and energy. You don't need a perfect diet, but you need a functional one. If you're relying on caffeine and sugar to get through the day, you're borrowing energy from your future self. That debt comes due. The standard American diet creates an energy roller coaster. High sugar breakfast, crash by mid-morning. Coffee and a muffin, temporary spike, crash again. Heavy lunch, afternoon slump, Energy drink or more coffee, jittery and scattered, crash again in the evening. Wine or dessert to relax. This pattern is incompatible with sustained presence. Here's what actually works. Protein and fat in the morning stabilize blood sugar for hours. Eggs, Greek yogurt, nuts, avocado. Something substantial that doesn't spike insulin. Mid-morning, if you're hungry, more protein and fat. Cheese, nuts, vegetables with hummus. Not a granola bar, not a banana. Those are pure sugar. Lunch should include protein, healthy fat, and vegetables. The goal is stable energy, not a post-meal coma. If you feel sleepy after eating, you ate too many refined carbohydrates. Adjust. Afternoon is when most people reach for stimulants. Instead, drink water. Most fatigue is dehydration masquerading as exhaustion. Walk outside for 10 minutes. Sunlight resets your circadian rhythm and boosts alertness naturally. Dinner should be your smallest meal, not your largest. Going to bed on a full stomach disrupts sleep quality. Here's a 14-day nutrition reset challenge. No alcohol, no processed sugar, no refined grains. Just whole foods. Meat, fish, eggs, vegetables, fruit, nuts, seeds, healthy oils. That's it. Most people resist this because they think it will be miserable. It's not. After 3 days, your energy stabilizes. After a week, your mood improves. After 2 weeks, you realize how much your previous diet was undermining you. Then you have a choice. You can go back to the old pattern, or you can keep most of these changes and notice how much more present and available you are in every interaction. This isn't about aesthetics or weight. This is about cognitive function and emotional regulation. Your magnetism runs on the fuel you give your body. Movement is how your body discharges stress and maintains baseline well-being. Sitting all day creates physical stagnation that manifests as mental and emotional stagnation. You don't need to be an athlete. You just need to move regularly. Walk, stretch, lift weights, dance, whatever gets you out of your head and into your body. Physical presence in the world begins with actually inhabiting your body, not just piloting it like a meat robot. When you move, you're releasing tension, circulating blood, oxygenating your brain, regulating stress hormones. All of this makes you more available for connection. The minimum effective dose is 30 minutes of movement daily. It doesn't have to be intense. A brisk walk counts. Yoga counts. Playing with your kids counts. What doesn't count is remaining sedentary for hours, then doing one intense workout and thinking you've checked the box. Your body needs consistent, daily movement. Here's a micro habit that changes everything. Every hour, stand up and move for 2 minutes. Set a timer if you need to. Walk around your space. Do some stretches. Shake out your body. This interrupts the physical and mental stagnation that builds when you're stationary. After a week of this, you'll notice your baseline energy is higher, your thinking is clearer, and your presence in conversations is stronger. Strength training specifically builds a kind of physical confidence that translates to presence. When you're physically capable, when you know your body can handle demands, you carry yourself differently. This isn't about aesthetics, it's about capability. 2 to 3 strength sessions per week, 20 to 30 minutes each is enough. You're not training for competition. You're building foundational strength that supports everything else. Squats, deadlifts, presses, rows, basic compound movements. Within a month, you'll notice you stand taller, move with more confidence, and occupy space differently. People respond to this even though they can't articulate why. Relationships are either energy sources or energy drains. Some people leave you feeling more alive after spending time with them. Others leave you feeling depleted. Audit your relationships honestly. Who enhances you and who diminishes you? You don't have to cut people off dramatically, but you can adjust the dosage. Spend more time with enhancers, less time with drainers. Protect your energy like it's a finite resource, because it is. The relationship energy audit works like this. Make a list of the 15 people you spend the most time with. Next to each name, rate how you feel after spending time with them. Energized, neutral, or depleted. Be honest. Some people you love might be energy drains. That's okay. It doesn't mean you stop caring about them. It means you acknowledge the cost and manage accordingly. Now look at your calendar for the past month. How much time are you spending with energizers versus drainers? Most people discover they're overinvested in draining relationships and underinvested in energizing ones. This is often because draining people demand more attention. They're needy, dramatic, crisis-oriented. They pull you in. Energizing people are often self-sufficient and don't require constant maintenance, so you neglect them. Here's the rebalancing protocol. For the next 30 days, proactively schedule time with your top 3 energizers. Reach out, make plans, prioritize these relationships. Simultaneously, create boundaries with your top 3 drainers. You don't have to ghost them. Just reduce frequency and duration. If someone consistently leaves you feeling worse, spend less time with them. If they ask why, you can be honest. You can say something like, "I'm being more intentional about how I spend my energy right now, and I need to pull back a bit." Most people won't ask. They'll just accept the new pattern. The ones who push back are usually the biggest drains. Notice that. Solitude is underrated, especially for people who think they're extroverts. Everyone needs time alone to process, to think, to reset. If you're constantly in social mode, you're performing all the time, and performance is exhausting. Solitude is where you come back to yourself. It's not loneliness, it's restoration. The difference between solitude and loneliness is choice. Solitude is chosen. Loneliness is imposed. Solitude is nourishing. Loneliness is depleting. Many people are terrified of being alone because they've never learned to be comfortable with themselves. They fill every moment with noise, podcasts, music, television, social media. The silence feels threatening because it creates space for thoughts and feelings they've been avoiding. Here's a solitude practice that builds capacity for presence. Once a week, spend 2 hours completely alone without any input. No phone, no music, no books, no television. Just you and your thoughts. Go for a walk. Sit in a park. Journal. Think. At first, this will feel uncomfortable. Your mind will race. You'll have the urge to reach for your phone constantly. Resist. After 30 minutes, the noise starts to settle. After an hour, you start to access a different quality of thought. Deeper, slower, more connected to what you actually think and feel versus what you've been told to think and feel. After 2 hours, you'll probably feel more grounded and clear than you have in months. This clarity is what makes you magnetic. People are drawn to centered, grounded humans who know themselves. Daily solitude doesn't have to be 2 hours. It can be 20 minutes in the morning before you check your phone. It can be a walk at lunch without headphones. It can be 10 minutes of sitting quietly before bed. The practice is creating space between you and the constant input of the world. In that space, you remember who you are. From that remembering, presence flows naturally. Purpose is what makes all of this worth doing. Why do you want to be unforgettable? What's the point? If the answer is just status or validation, that's a weak foundation. It won't sustain you through the discomfort of change. But if you want to be unforgettable, because you have something to contribute, because you want to create impact, because you're tired of your ideas dying in obscurity, because you want to build relationships that matter, because you want to be seen for who you actually are, that's solid ground. Purpose is your magnetic north. When you're aligned with purpose, presence flows naturally because you're doing something that matters to you. Let me tell you about Rachel. She was a marketing director who'd been feeling increasingly hollow despite external success. Good salary, nice title, respected by colleagues. But when I asked her why she wanted to become more magnetic, she said, "I just want people to take me seriously. That's outcome, not purpose." I pushed deeper. Why does being taken seriously matter? Because I have ideas that could change how we approach customer relationships, but they get dismissed. Why do those ideas matter? She paused for a long time. Then she said, "I spent 5 years in customer service before moving into marketing. I know what customers actually need, but everyone in leadership came up through sales or finance. They don't understand. They make decisions that look good on spreadsheets but create terrible experiences for real people. I want to bridge that gap. That's purpose. That's worth fighting for. Your purpose doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't have to be saving the world. It has to be true. It has to be yours." The purpose clarification exercise works like this. Write down 3 moments in your life where you felt most alive, most yourself, most aligned. They don't have to be achievements. They can be quiet moments. Now look for the thread connecting them. What was present in all 3? Was it creativity, connection, learning, helping others, solving problems, expressing something that needed to be expressed? That thread is probably pointing toward your purpose. Now write 1 sentence that captures it. Rachel's was, "I want to bring customer voices into rooms where decisions are made." That became her North Star. Every interaction, every meeting, every conversation, she asked herself, "Am I serving this purpose right now?" When the answer was yes, her presence was effortless. When the answer was no, she felt like she was performing. Here's a daily purpose practice. Every morning before you check your phone, before you start reacting to the world's demands, sit for 5 minutes and ask yourself, what matters today? Not what's on your calendar. Not what's urgent. What actually matters? Write down 1 or 2 things. Then ask, how can I show up today in service of what matters? This isn't about being productive. It's about being intentional. On days when you do this practice, you'll notice your presence is different. You're less reactive, more grounded, clearer about where to invest your energy. People will sense this, even if they can't name it. Purpose drift is real. What mattered to you 5 years ago might not matter now. That's okay. Growth means your purpose evolves. The danger is not noticing the drift and continuing to pursue something that no longer resonates. This creates a specific kind of exhaustion. You're working hard, maybe even succeeding by external metrics, but you feel increasingly empty. That's misalignment. The quarterly purpose check-in is essential. Every 3 months, ask yourself, is what I'm doing still aligned with what I care about? If yes, great, keep going. If no, what needs to change? Sometimes it's a small adjustment. Sometimes it's a major pivot. The key is catching it early before resentment and burnout set in. What do you want to be remembered for? Not in a legacy sense necessarily, but day to day. After someone spends an hour with you, what do you want them to walk away feeling or thinking? After you leave a job, what do you want your colleagues to say about what it was like to work with you? After you're gone from someone's life, what do you want them to carry forward? These are the questions that clarify what kind of magnetism you're building. Magnetism without purpose is just charisma, and charisma without substance is hollow. Let me give you an example of someone who got this wrong. I knew a guy named Derek who was objectively charismatic. Great storyteller, commanding presence, people were drawn to him immediately. But after you spent more than an hour with him, you'd realize there was no substance beneath the performance. Every story was calculated to make him look good. Every conversation eventually turned back to him. He wasn't interested in you. He was interested in your attention. Over time, people started avoiding him. His magnetism was empty. It attracted people initially but repelled them long-term. He couldn't understand why relationships never deepened, why people stopped returning his calls, why opportunities dried up despite his obvious charisma. The answer was simple. He had presence without purpose. He was magnetic in service of nothing but his own ego. That's not sustainable. Growth mindset is the engine. Carol Dweck's research on fixed versus growth mindset shows that people who believe abilities can be developed through effort outperform people who believe abilities are innate, even when starting from the same baseline. If you think you're either charismatic or you're not, and it's fixed, you won't put in the work to change. But if you understand that magnetism is a skill set that can be learned, you'll engage with the process differently. You'll see feedback as data, not judgment. You'll see failure as information, not identity. You'll embrace discomfort as the cost of growth. Here's what growth mindset looks like in practice. You give a presentation and it doesn't land well. Fixed mindset response: I'm just not good at presenting. I should avoid doing this. Growth mindset response: that didn't work. What specifically went wrong? Was it my pacing? My content? My delivery? How can I adjust for next time? The first response closes down learning. The second opens it up. The first makes you shrink. The second makes you expand. Every interaction is either confirming what you already believe about yourself or revealing new information. Growth mindset treats everything as information. The feedback integration protocol is crucial. After any significant interaction, presentation, meeting, difficult conversation, date, whatever, do a brief self-debrief. What went well? What didn't? What surprised me? What would I do differently next time? Write it down. Don't just think about it. Writing creates clarity. Then, if appropriate, ask someone who was there for their perspective. What did they notice? What landed? What didn't? Compare their feedback to your self-assessment. The gaps are interesting. Things you thought went well that they didn't notice. Things you thought were disasters that they barely registered. Over time, this process calibrates your self-awareness and accelerates your growth. Here's a specific practice for building growth mindset around magnetism. Every week, identify one micro skill to work on. Week 1 might be eye contact duration. You're going to practice holding eye contact for 3 seconds in every interaction. Week 2 might be eliminating uptalk. You're going to record yourself and count how many sentences end with rising inflection. Week 3 might be using people's names more. You're going to say someone's name at least once in every conversation. These are tiny, specific, measurable. After a week of focused practice, that micro skill becomes more automatic. Then you add the next one. After a year, you've worked on 52 micro skills. The compound effect is transformative. The beginner's mind is about staying curious. Once you think you've figured something out, you stop paying attention. You stop learning. Magnetic people maintain curiosity about themselves and others. They're always asking, what am I not seeing? What's another way to think about this? What can I learn from this person or situation? Curiosity keeps you dynamic. It prevents you from calcifying into a persona that worked once, but no longer serves you. The most boring people are the ones who stopped being curious 10 years ago. They have their scripts, their opinions, their way of doing things, and they're not open to anything new. You can feel the staleness on them. Here's a curiosity practice. Once a week, have a conversation with someone you'd normally dismiss or avoid. Someone from a different generation, different political perspective, different industry, different life experience. Go in with genuine curiosity, not to debate or convince, to understand. Ask questions. Listen. Try to find one thing that surprises you or challenges your assumptions. This keeps your mind flexible. It prevents the rigidity that makes people forgettable. Rigid people are predictable. Predictable people are boring. Boring people are forgotten. Memory making is deliberate. The peak end rule says people judge experiences based on the peak moment and the ending. This means you can design memorable experiences by creating peaks and sticking the landing. If you're hosting an event, plan one moment that's different from everything else. A surprise, a meaningful ritual, a shared challenge, something that will become the story people tell about the event. Then end strong. Don't let things fizzle out. End intentionally with something that resonates. I once attended a conference where the organizer did this masterfully. The content was fine, typical conference fare, but in the middle of day 2, she stopped everything and said, "We're going to do something different. Everyone find someone you haven't talked to yet. You have 15 minutes to go somewhere in this building, just the 2 of you, and have a conversation about something you've never told anyone at a professional event. Then come back." People were confused and uncomfortable, but they did it. When everyone reconvened, the energy in the room was completely different. People had connected at a real level. That became the story everyone told about the conference. Not the keynotes, not the panels. That 15-minute disruption. She'd created a peak. Then at the end, instead of the typical thank yous and see you next years, she had everyone write one sentence on a card about what they were taking away and exchange it with someone. That created a tangible artifact and a final moment of connection. Peak end rule executed perfectly. You can do this at smaller scale. If you're having dinner with friends, create one memorable moment. Maybe you go around and everyone shares something they're grateful for. Maybe you introduce a thought-provoking question. Maybe you do something silly that makes everyone laugh. The point is to elevate the experience beyond routine. Then when you're saying goodbye, don't just wave and leave. Take an extra 30 seconds. Make eye contact. Say something specific about what you enjoyed. That's sticking the landing. People will remember that dinner differently than the dozens of other dinners they've had. Generosity cements memory. People remember givers, not because generosity is transactional, but because giving creates connection. When you help someone without expecting anything in return, you become part of their story. They remember who was there for them. Generosity can be time, attention, expertise, resources, whatever you have to offer. The key is that it's genuine, not strategic. If you're calculating return on investment for every act of kindness, people sense it, and it doesn't land as generosity. It lands as manipulation. Here's what strategic generosity looks like in practice. Every week, do one thing for someone that cost you something: time, energy, money, convenience, and expect nothing back. Maybe you introduce 2 people who should know each other. Maybe you send someone an article that made you think of them. Maybe you offer to help someone with a project. Maybe you write a recommendation for someone on LinkedIn. Small acts, but genuine. No keeping score. No, I did this for you, so now you owe me. Just generosity. After 6 months of this practice, you'll notice your network has deepened significantly. People will start doing things for you without you asking. Not because you manipulated them, but because you created a pattern of giving and people naturally reciprocate. Mentorship is one of the highest forms of generosity and one of the most powerful forms of magnetism. When you invest in someone else's growth, you become unforgettable to them. Not because they're obligated to remember you, but because you change their trajectory. The Pygmalion effect shows that when someone believes in your potential, you're more likely to achieve it. You can be that person for others. You can see possibility in them that they don't see in themselves yet. You can give feedback that challenges and supports them simultaneously. You can watch them grow and celebrate their success. That's legacy. Let me tell you about James. He was a senior engineer who felt stuck professionally. He was technically excellent but had plateaued. I asked him, "Who could you mentor?" He said he didn't have anything to teach. Classic imposter syndrome. I pushed, "What did you struggle with 5 years ago that you figured out now?" He thought about it. 5 years ago, he was a junior developer drowning in complexity, unable to see patterns, constantly getting lost in details. Now he could look at a complex system and immediately identify the core problem. That's expertise. That's worth teaching. He started mentoring 2 junior developers on his team, just 30 minutes a week each. Within 3 months, those developers were performing at a higher level. Within 6 months, they were advocating for James in rooms he wasn't in. Within a year, he got promoted to lead engineer, not because he was politicking, but because he'd multiplied his impact through others. The mentorship multiplication effect is real. When you mentor someone, you don't just help that one person. You help everyone they go on to help. Your approach to problem solving, your way of thinking about challenges, your values around collaboration, those get transmitted. You become part of a lineage. Decades from now, someone might be using a technique or holding a value that traces back to you, and they don't even know your name. That's the deepest form of legacy. Here's how to start mentoring even if you think you have nothing to offer. First, identify what you know now that you didn't know 5 years ago. Write down 5 things. These don't have to be enormous. They can be small but useful. How to have difficult conversations without destroying relationships. How to prioritize when everything feels urgent. How to recover from public failure. How to negotiate salary. How to build credibility in a new role. Whatever you've learned through hard experience. Second, identify someone who's 5 years behind you on a similar path. They're struggling with what you've already figured out. Third, offer to meet for 30 minutes once a month to share what you've learned. That's it. No formal program, no official title. Just one human helping another human navigate something difficult. The mentorship conversation structure is simple. You ask them, "What's challenging you right now?" They tell you. You listen without immediately solving. Then you ask, "What have you tried?" They tell you. You reflect back what you're hearing. Then, and only then, you share relevant experience, not advice. Not, "Here's what you should do." Just, "Here's what I experienced in a similar situation. Here's what I tried. Here's what worked and what didn't. Here's what I learned." Then you ask, "What resonates with you from that?" They tell you. You help them think through next steps. That's one conversation. Do this monthly, and you've become a mentor. The mistake most people make in mentorship is trying to solve the other person's problems for them. This creates dependency and doesn't build capacity. The better approach is to help them develop their own problem-solving ability. You do this through questions more than answers. When they come to you with a problem, instead of immediately offering your solution, ask, "What do you think you should do? What are your options? What's the trade-off of each option? What's your gut telling you? What would you tell someone else in this situation?" These questions force them to think, and thinking is the skill they need to build. Your job is to be a thinking partner, not a solution dispenser. Feedback is one of the greatest gifts you can give someone, and most people are terrible at both giving and receiving it. Ineffective feedback is vague. "You're doing great. You need to be more strategic. Work on your communication." These statements are useless because they're not actionable. Effective feedback is specific, behavioral, and forward-looking. Instead of, "You need to be more strategic," try, "In yesterday's meeting you jumped straight to execution details without first aligning on the goal." Next time, try starting with, "What are we actually trying to accomplish?" before discussing how. That's specific. It identifies the exact behavior. It suggests a concrete alternative. The person can actually do something with that feedback. The feedback formula is situation, behavior, impact, alternative. Situation, in yesterday's meeting. Behavior. You interrupted Jane 3 times while she was presenting. Impact. She seemed to shut down and didn't share her full idea. Alternative. Next time, jot down your thoughts and wait until she's finished before jumping in. This formula removes the personal attack quality that makes people defensive. You're not saying you're an interrupter. You're describing a specific situation and its impact and offering a path forward. The person can hear that. Receiving feedback well is its own skill. Most people get defensive, explain, justify, minimize. This shuts down the feedback and ensures they don't learn from it. The better response is to listen without interrupting, ask clarifying questions, thank the person for the feedback, then take time to think about whether it's valid. You don't have to agree with all feedback. Some feedback is more about the giver's issues than yours, but you should at least consider it. The practice is, when someone gives you feedback, say, "Thank you for telling me that. Let me think about it." Then actually think about it. Is there any truth to this? Even if it's only 10% true, what's that 10%? Can you adjust? This openness to feedback accelerates growth dramatically. Teaching is how you multiply your impact. When you share what you know, you create ripples. The people you teach go on to teach others. Your ideas spread beyond your immediate reach. You become part of a lineage, and teaching forces you to clarify your own thinking. If you can't explain something clearly, you don't understand it well enough yet. Teaching reveals gaps in your knowledge and pushes you to fill them. You don't need a formal platform to teach. You can teach through writing, speaking, creating videos, leading workshops, or just having conversations where you share what you've learned. The key is to make it accessible. Most experts make the mistake of teaching at their current level of understanding, forgetting what it was like to be a beginner. They use jargon. They skip steps. They assume background knowledge. This loses people immediately. The best teachers remember what they didn't understand and address those exact confusions. Here's a teaching practice. Pick one thing you know well. Now explain it to someone who knows nothing about it. Watch where they get confused. That confusion is data. It shows you where your explanation wasn't clear. Adjust and try again with someone else. After explaining the same thing to 10 different people, your explanation will be dramatically better. You'll have stripped out the unnecessary complexity. You'll have found the analogies that actually work. You'll have anticipated the questions and built the answers into your explanation. This is how you become a great teacher. The teaching relapse is when you start performing expertise instead of actually helping people learn. You use big words to sound smart. You make things more complicated than they need to be. You talk at people instead of with them. The fix is to constantly ask yourself, is this serving the learner or is this serving my ego? If you're teaching to look impressive, you're not teaching. You're showing off. True teaching is making the complex simple, not making the simple complex. Contribution beyond yourself is what creates lasting magnetism. You could be individually unforgettable, but if you're not building anything larger than yourself, your impact ends when you do. What are you creating that will outlast you? It could be a body of work, a community, an organization, a set of ideas, a way of doing things that others adopt. It doesn't have to be grand. It just has to be real. What are you leaving behind that's better than what you found? Think about the people you admire most. Chances are they created something that outlasted them. A writer whose books are still read decades after their death. An entrepreneur who built a company that still serves people. A teacher whose former students are now teaching others. A community organizer who created structures that continue to bring people together. An artist whose work still moves people. These people aren't just memorable. They're woven into the fabric of other people's lives and the culture itself. You might be thinking, I'm not a founder or a famous artist. What can I possibly create that matters? The answer is more than you think. You can create a mentorship program in your organization that continues after you leave. You can write documentation that makes other people's work easier. You can establish a tradition in your family or friend group that brings people together. You can share your knowledge publicly in ways that help strangers. You can build relationships that generate opportunities for others. You can advocate for changes that improve systems. Small acts of creation compound over time. The contribution clarity exercise works like this. Imagine it's 10 years from now. You're looking back on this decade. What do you hope exists that doesn't exist now, and that you helped create? It doesn't have to be something you created alone. It can be something you contributed to. Write it down. Be specific. Not, I want to make a difference, but I want to have trained 50 people in this skill, or I want to have built a community of people working on this problem, Or, I want to have created resources that help people navigate this. Challenge. Specificity creates actionability. Vagueness creates nothing. Now work backward. If that's where you want to be in 10 years, what needs to happen in 5 years? What needs to happen in 1 year? What needs to happen this quarter? This month? This week? Break it down until you have an action you can take today. Most people never start contributing beyond themselves because they think it requires some dramatic leap. It doesn't. It requires a small step, then another small step, then another. Direction matters more than speed. Here's a micro challenge for building contribution capacity. Once a month, create something useful and give it away. Write an article sharing what you've learned about something. Make a video teaching a skill. Compile a resource list. Introduce 2 people who should know each other. Host a gathering that brings people together around a shared interest. Volunteer your expertise to help someone solve a problem. No payment, no expectation of return, just contribution. After a year, you'll have created 12 things of value. Some will land, some won't. But you'll have built the muscle of contribution, and that muscle is what makes you unforgettable. The deathbed metric is clarifying. Bronnie Ware worked in palliative care and documented the top 5 regrets of the dying. Number 1 was, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. Most people spend their lives performing for an imaginary audience, trying to meet expectations they never actually agreed to. They make themselves forgettable by becoming what they think they should be instead of who they actually are. Then they get to the end and realize they wasted the one life they had being someone else. Number 2, regret. I wish I hadn't worked so much. People don't regret the relationships they didn't build, the experiences they didn't have. They regret that they prioritized achievement over connection, productivity over presence. Number 3, I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. People regret what they didn't say more than what they did say, the times they held back, the times they stayed silent when they should have spoken, the times they chose safety over authenticity. Number 4, I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. Relationships require maintenance. They don't survive on autopilot. People at the end of life desperately wish they'd invested more in the relationships that mattered. Number 5, I wish I'd let myself be happier. People realize too late that happiness was always a choice, and they chose worry, resentment, fear instead. These regrets are all about presence, authenticity, connection, contribution. The things that make you magnetic. The things that make you unforgettable. The things that make life meaningful. You can wait until you're dying to realize this, or you can realize it now and adjust accordingly. Imagine you're lying on your deathbed, looking back on your life. What do you hope you did? Who do you hope you were? What do you hope you stood for? What conversations do you hope you had? What risks do you hope you took? What impact do you hope you made? Write this down. Be honest. Not what you think you should say. What you actually hope. This is your values clarification. This is your North Star. Now, are you living in a way that's consistent with that vision, or are you deferring it, waiting for someday? Someday is not a day of the week. You don't get a practice life. This is it. Here's the brutal question. If today was your last day, what would be incomplete? What would you regret not saying? Not doing? Not being? Make a list. Now ask yourself, why are you waiting? What are you afraid of? Usually the answer is rejection, failure, judgment, discomfort. These are real fears. But are they bigger than the regret of never trying? Most people, when they actually face this question, realize the fear of trying is smaller than the fear of never having tried. This realization is what shifts people from passive to active, from forgettable to unforgettable. The deathbed visualization is a powerful practice. Once a quarter, spend 30 minutes imagining you're at the end of your life. You're looking back. What do you see? Are you satisfied? Are you proud? Or are you full of regret? What would need to change now for you to be satisfied when you actually get there? Write down 3 changes. Then make one of those changes this quarter. This practice keeps you aligned with what actually matters instead of getting lost in the urgency of daily life. Safety is overrated. Not physical safety, obviously, but social and emotional safety. The kind that keeps you from ever saying anything controversial, ever standing out, ever risking disapproval. That kind of safety makes you invisible. Magnetic people are willing to be disliked. Not because they're trying to be polarizing, but because they understand that standing for something means some people won't like it, and that's fine. You can't be unforgettable to everyone. Trying to be universally liked makes you bland. Be unforgettable to the people who matter. Let the others forget you. That's not a loss. That's focus. The courage to be disliked is a core component of authenticity. When you're constantly shape-shifting to fit different contexts and please different people, you fragment yourself. There's no coherent you to remember. But when you have a stable core, a set of values and a way of being that doesn't change dramatically based on who's in the room, people know what they're getting. They can predict how you'll show up. That consistency is part of what makes you memorable. Consistency is not the same as rigidity. You can adapt your style and approach to different contexts without betraying your core. But you can't be a completely different person in every situation and expect anyone to remember who you actually are. Integrity is living in alignment with your stated values. It's the integration of belief and action. When there's a gap between what you say you care about and what you actually do, people notice. They might not call you out, but they notice. And that gap erodes trust and memorability. But when your actions consistently reflect your values, even when it's costly, even when it's inconvenient, people remember. They remember who you are when it matters. They remember that you can be counted on. That's magnetism with substance. The 90-day magnetism protocol is a structured path forward. This isn't vague advice to work on yourself. This is a specific, actionable roadmap with daily practices, weekly milestones, and built-in accountability. Weeks 1 and 2 are about baseline assessment. You can't improve what you don't measure. Record yourself in multiple contexts, video and audio. Watch it back. Take notes. What do you notice? Ask 3 people who know you well to give you honest feedback. What's one thing that makes you memorable? What's one thing that might be holding you back from being more memorable? Write down their exact words. Don't argue or defend. Just listen and document. Day 1 of the protocol starts with the magnetism self-audit. Find a quiet space where you won't be interrupted for 30 minutes. Get out a notebook or open a document. You're going to rate yourself honestly on 8 dimensions, each on a scale of 1 to 10. Vocal presence. Is your voice varied, resonant, and engaging, or monotone and forgettable? Physicality. Do you take up appropriate space, move with confidence, and use purposeful gestures? Emotional contagion. Do people feel things when they're around you, or are interactions emotionally flat? Narrative coherence. Can you tell compelling stories that people remember and retell? Boundary clarity. Do you set and enforce boundaries, or do people walk over you? Authenticity. Are you genuinely yourself, or are you performing what you think people want? Conversational reciprocity. Do you balance speaking and listening, or do you dominate or disappear? Post-interaction resonance. Do people remember you and reach out again, or do you fade from their awareness immediately? Write down your scores. Be brutally honest. No one sees this but you. Now write 1 paragraph about why you scored yourself the way you did in each area. What evidence do you have? What patterns do you notice? This is your baseline. You'll return to this assessment every 30 days to track progress. Day 2. Record yourself speaking for 5 minutes about any topic. Your work, your weekend plans, a movie you watched, anything. Don't script it. Just talk naturally. Now watch it back with the sound off. What do you notice about your body language? Are you fidgeting? Are your gestures contained or expansive? Do you look comfortable or uncomfortable? Write down 3 specific observations. Now watch it again with sound. How's your vocal variety? Are you speaking in a narrow frequency range? How often do you use filler words? How's your pacing? Write down 3 more observations. This is uncomfortable for most people. You'll likely hate how you look and sound. That's normal. The point isn't to feel good. The point is to see clearly. Day 3, the feedback gathering mission. Reach out to 3 people who know you in different contexts. 1 from work, 1 from your personal life, 1 from somewhere else. Use this exact script. I'm working on becoming more effective in how. Day 5, identify your top 3 growth areas based on the audit and feedback. These are the dimensions where you scored lowest or where feedback revealed a significant issue. Write them down. For the next 90 days, these are your focus areas. Everything else is maintenance. You can't improve 8 things simultaneously. You can improve 3 things systematically. Days 6 and 7 are for setting up your practice infrastructure. You need 3 things: a daily tracking system, a weekly review ritual, and an accountability structure. Daily tracking is simple. At the end of each day, you'll spend 2 minutes noting whether you did your practice for that day and 1 observation about your progress. Weekly review is 15 minutes every Sunday where you look back at the week, celebrate what worked, troubleshoot what didn't, and set intentions for the coming week. Accountability can be a friend who's also working on growth, a coach, or even just a commitment to yourself that you take seriously. The people who complete this protocol have accountability. The people who give up don't. Weeks 3 and 4 focus on voice. This is often the quickest area to see dramatic improvement, which builds momentum for the harder work ahead. Day 1 of week 3, start your morning with the humming exercise. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Hum at a comfortable pitch, feeling the vibration in your chest, your face, your head. Let the pitch vary. Go up and down your range. This warms up your vocal cords and builds resonance. Do this every single morning. It feels weird at first. You'll get used to it. After a week, you'll notice your voice sounds richer and fuller throughout the day. Day 2, add lip trills. Blow air through closed lips so they vibrate like a horse. Do this for 1 minute, varying pitch as you go. This builds breath support and relaxes tension in your face and throat. Your voice is an instrument. These exercises are tuning it. Day 3 through 7, add reading aloud with exaggerated prosody. Pick any text, a news article, a novel, a children's book. Read 1 page out loud every day, but dramatically overdo the vocal variation. Make it theatrical. Speed up and slow down wildly. Whisper, then boom. Go high-pitched, then drop low. Pause for dramatic effect. This feels absurd. Do it anyway. You're expanding your vocal range and building muscle memory. After a week, some of that expanded range bleeds into your normal speaking voice without effort. Week 4 is about eliminating verbal clutter. Day 1, record a 5-minute conversation with someone. Get their permission first. Then listen back and count your filler words. Sort of, basically, actually, literally. Tally them. Most people are shocked. They use filler words every few sentences without realizing it. Day 2, do the same recording and counting exercise. Just the awareness starts to reduce frequency. Day 3 through 7, practice the pause replacement technique. Every time you feel the urge to say or close your mouth and breathe instead. The silence feels eternal to you. It's barely noticeable to others. By the end of the week, your filler word count should drop by at least 50%. Here's where most people relapse. Week 5 hits and the initial motivation wanes. The exercises feel boring. You skip a day, then 2 days, then you've fallen off completely. This is predictable. Expect it. Plan for it. The relapse-proofing strategy has 3 components. First, shrink the behavior. If 5 minutes of humming feels like too much, do 2 minutes. 2 minutes is infinitely better than 0 minutes. Keep the habit alive even in minimal form. Second, tie it to an existing habit. Don't just plan to hum every morning. Hum right after you brush your teeth. The existing habit becomes the trigger for the new one. Third, have a recovery protocol. When you miss a day, don't spiral into, I've failed, might as well quit. Just do the practice the next day. Missing 1 day is not failure. Quitting is failure. 1 day off, get back on. 2 days off, get back on. The habit is never fully broken until you stop getting back on. Weeks 5 and 6 focus on body. Day 1, the wall test. Stand with your back against a wall. Heels, butt, shoulders, and head should touch simultaneously. For most people, this is impossible without effort. Your head doesn't reach because of forward head posture. Your lower back arches because of tight hip flexors. Feel what proper alignment feels like. It probably feels wrong because you're so adapted to misalignment. Do this every morning for 60 seconds. Just stand there and feel it. Day 2, add the CEO stance practice. Feet shoulder width apart, weight evenly distributed, spine straight, shoulders back and down, head level. Practice this stance for 2 minutes while doing something else. Brushing teeth, making coffee, waiting for the elevator. You're building muscle memory, so this becomes your default posture instead of something you have to think about. Day 3 through 5, video yourself walking. Set up your phone 20 feet away. Walk toward it naturally. Watch the playback. What do you notice? Are you looking down? Are your shoulders hunched? Are you shuffling or striding? Are your arms swinging freely or held rigidly? Make one adjustment and record again. Maybe this time you're going to look forward instead of down. Record, watch, adjust. Do this 5 times. You're training yourself to walk with confidence and purpose. Day 6 and 7, practice entrances and exits. This sounds theatrical, but it works. Set up your phone inside a room. Walk up to the doorway, pause for 2 seconds, scan the room, then enter with purpose. Do this 10 times. It will feel ridiculous. Do it anyway. Then practice exits. You're in the room, you signal you're leaving, you make eye contact, you exit cleanly without lingering or backing away while still talking. 10 repetitions. By the end of the week, your entrances and exits are transformed. This becomes automatic. Week 6 is gesture work. Day 1, watch yourself on video again, but this time focus only on your hands. What are they doing? Are they hidden in your pockets? Are they fidgeting constantly? Are they making illustrative gestures that enhance what you're saying, or are they just nervous adapters? Write down your default hand pattern. Most people have one. They cross their arms, or they clasp their hands, or they touch their face, or they gesture in a repetitive way. Day 2 through 4, practice the gesture zones. Waist to shoulder height is your primary zone. This is where gestures are visible and effective. Record yourself telling a 2-minute story and keep your gestures in this zone. It feels unnatural at first. Your hands want to do what they've always done. Override that. By day 4, it starts to feel more natural. Day 5 through 7, practice gesture variety. You're going to record yourself telling the same story 3 times. First time, use open palm gestures, which signal openness and honesty. Second time, use pointing and directional gestures, which signal clarity and direction. Third time, use descriptive gestures, showing size, shape, movement with your hands. Watch all 3 back. Which gestures enhance the story? Which were distracting? You're building a gesture vocabulary. The mid-protocol assessment happens at the end of week 6. You're halfway through. Time to check progress. Go back to your day 1 self-audit. Rate yourself again on the 8 dimensions. Compare scores. Most people see significant improvement in their focus areas. You might have gone from a 3 to a 6 in vocal presence, from a 4 to a 7 in physicality. This visible progress is crucial for maintaining motivation through the second half. Also gather feedback again from the same 3 people. Ask them, have you noticed any changes in how I communicate or show up? Don't tell them what you've been working on. Just ask open-ended. Their observations often reveal progress you didn't notice yourself. Weeks 7 and 8 focus on storytelling. Day 1, write your origin story. 500 words about why you do what you do or care about what you care about. Use the hero's journey structure. Ordinary world, call to adventure, trials, transformation. Don't say I learned that at the end. Let the story speak for itself. This takes longer than you think. Most people spend 2 to 3 hours getting this right. That's fine. This is one of your signature stories. It's worth the investment. Day 2, practice telling your origin story out loud. Record yourself. Time it. Most 500-word stories take 3 to 4 minutes to tell verbally. Watch the recording. How's your pacing? Where do you rush? Where do you linger too long? Mark the spots that need adjustment. Day 3, tell your origin story to a friend. Ask them afterward, what do you remember most? What surprised you? What felt unclear? Take notes. Revise based on feedback. Day 4, write your failure story. A time you messed up significantly and what came from it. Same structure, ordinary world, the mistake, the consequences, the recovery, the transformation. This story is harder to write because it requires vulnerability. Most people want to minimize the failure or rush to the lesson. Don't do that. Spend time in the discomfort of the failure. That's what makes the story human and memorable. Day 5 through 7, repeat the practice, record, tell, revise cycle with your failure story. By the end of week 7, you have 2 polished signature stories. Week 8, write and practice your triumph story. A time you accomplished something difficult or meaningful. The pattern is the same. Ordinary world, challenge, obstacles, breakthrough, resolution. 3 stories. Origin, failure, triumph. These become your core arsenal. In any interaction, you can deploy one of these depending on context. Here's the storytelling relapse prevention. The danger is over-rehearsing until your stories sound canned and performative. The fix is to tell them in different ways each time. Don't memorize a script. Memorize the structure and the key beats, but let the actual words vary. Tell the story to different people and notice what you naturally emphasize or de-emphasize based on the listener. This keeps the stories fresh and authentic. Weeks 9 and 10 focus on conversation. This is where magnetism lives most of the time. Day 1, the listening ratio challenge. In every conversation today, ask 3 questions before making 1 statement about yourself. Actually count. Most people think they're balanced conversationalists. Then they do this exercise and realize they're actually waiting to talk, not listening. 3 questions to 1 statement. Try it for 1 day. It's harder than it sounds. Day 2, practice active listening techniques. Reflect, validate, expand. In every conversation, after someone shares something, you're going to reflect back what you heard. So what you're saying is, then validate their experience. That makes complete sense. I'd feel the same way. Then expand the conversation. Tell me more about that. Do this 3 times today. Notice how people respond. Most people light up when they feel truly heard. Day 3 through 5, the depth acceleration challenge. In 3 conversations, you're going to try to move from small talk to meaningful conversation within 5 minutes. The technique is simple. After 1 or 2 exchanges of surface-level pleasantries, ask a question that invites depth. What's challenging you right now? What are you excited about? What's something you've been thinking about lately? Then actually listen to the answer and follow up. Many people are desperate for real conversation, but no one ever offers it. When you do, they remember you. Day 6 and 7, practice graceful disagreement. Find 2 opportunities to disagree with someone without making it hostile or disappearing. Use the Steel Manning technique. State their position in its strongest form first, then explain your different perspective. I understand you're saying X, and that makes sense because of Y. My concern is Z. Pay attention to tone. The words can be perfect, but if your tone is contemptuous or defensive, it doesn't work. You want curious and respectful, even in disagreement. Week 10 is Boundaries Week. Day 1, identify 3 areas where you consistently over-accommodate. Where do you say yes when you want to say no? Where do you let people take more than you're comfortable giving? Write them down specifically. Day 2 through 4, practice the slow no. Let me think about that and get back to you. Or, I need to check my schedule. Or, that might not work for me, but let me consider it. You're buying time instead of reflexively agreeing. Practice this 3 times this week. Notice the discomfort. Notice that nothing terrible happens when you don't immediately say yes. Day 5 through 7, practice the clear no. That doesn't work for me, or I'm not available for that, or no, thank you. Full sentences with no apology, no over-explanation, no justification. Just a clear, polite decline. Do this twice this week. It will feel harsh to you. It won't feel harsh to them. Most people respect clear boundaries more than wishy-washy maybes. The boundary relapse happens when you successfully set a boundary, someone pushes back, and you fold. They ask again, they guilt you, they push harder, and you cave. This reinforces boundary violation. The fix is consequences. If you say no and they keep pushing, the consequence is distance. You don't have to announce it. You just become less available to that person. They learn, consciously or not, that pushing doesn't work with you. People who respect boundaries stay in your life. People who don't respect boundaries fade out. This is healthy pruning. Weeks 11 and 12 are integration and refinement. You've built skills in voice, body, story, conversation, boundaries. Now you take them into high-stakes environments and calibrate. Day 1 of week 11, identify 3 upcoming high-stakes interactions. Job interview, important presentation, difficult conversation, first date, networking event, whatever matters to you. Write them down with dates. Day 2 through 7, prepare specifically for each high-stakes interaction. If it's a presentation, structure it as a story with a clear arc. Practice your vocal variety and purposeful pauses. If it's a difficult conversation, write out your key points and practice delivering them with appropriate body language. If it's a networking event, have your signature stories ready and practice your entrance. Preparation reduces anxiety and increases presence. Week 12. You're executing these high-stakes interactions with your new skills. After each one, do a detailed debrief. What worked? What didn't? What surprised you? How did people respond differently than they might have before? Get feedback from someone who was there if possible. This final week is about noticing the difference. You're not a completely different person. You're a more embodied, more expressed, more present version of yourself. The post-protocol maintenance plan is essential. Most people complete the 90 days, see great results, then stop practicing and regress within months. The maintenance plan prevents this. Daily, 5-minute vocal warm-up, posture check, and 1 intentional conversation where you deploy your skills. This takes less than 15 minutes total. Weekly, record yourself for 5 minutes and review. Practice one of your stories. Gather feedback from 1 interaction. This takes about 30 minutes. Monthly, full magnetism audit. Rate yourself on the 8 dimensions. Compare to previous month. Identify 1 area to emphasize in the coming month. This takes about an hour. Quarterly, gather external feedback again. Schedule high-stakes practice opportunities. Adjust your approach based on what you're learning. This takes a few hours but spaces out over the quarter. The maintenance relapse happens when life gets busy, and you convince yourself you don't need the practices anymore. You've built the skill so you can coast. This is false. Skills atrophy without practice. The fix is tying maintenance to identity, not outcomes. You don't practice because you need to become more magnetic. You practice because you are someone who values presence, growth, and connection. It's not about achieving a goal and stopping. It's about becoming someone for whom these practices are a natural part of life. You entered this audiobook feeling invisible, forgotten, or inconsistently remembered. You've learned the neuroscience behind memory and magnetism. You've learned the behavioral skills that make someone unforgettable. You've learned that it's not magic, it's not luck, it's not genetics. It's method, it's practice, it's choice. 12 weeks from now, if you commit to this process, you walk into rooms and atmospheres shift. People lean toward you. They remember your name. They recall what you said 3 days later. They seek you out. They recommend you for opportunities. They feel something in your presence that they don't feel with everyone else. Not because you're performing charisma, but because you're fully present, fully yourself, fully alive. You're not becoming louder. You're becoming clearer. You're not becoming someone different. You're becoming more authentically you. You're not becoming perfect. You're becoming unforgettable. The world is full of noise, of people going through the motions, of competent but forgettable humans doing their jobs and living their lives and leaving almost no trace. You don't have to be one of them. You can choose to matter. You can choose to be seen. You can choose to be remembered. What's one thing about yourself you've been hiding that would make you more magnetic if you revealed it? What vulnerability have you been protecting that's actually keeping you invisible? What truth have you been avoiding that could set you free? Who is one person you want to be unforgettable to? And what will you do differently the next time you interact with them? What's the smallest change you can make today that ripples into transformation? How will you measure whether you've become the magnetic version of yourself? Magnetism is not manipulation. It's revelation. You're not creating a false self. You're freeing your true self from all the conditioning and fear and social performance that's been suffocating it. The world needs your particular presence, your specific way of seeing things, your unique combination of experiences and insights and humor and depth. Someone is waiting to remember you. Someone needs what you have to offer, but they can't receive it if they can't see you. They can't see you if you're hiding. They can't remember you if you're forgettable. So go, be unforgettable. Not someday, today, this conversation, this meeting, this interaction. Show up fully. Speak clearly. Listen deeply. Tell your stories. Set your boundaries. Take up space. Be present, be you. The version of you that's been waiting for permission, I'm giving you permission. Actually, you don't need my permission. You never did. You just needed to remember that you have the capacity for magnetism within you already. It's been there the whole time, buried under layers of learned behavior and social fear and the desperate need to fit in. You were born magnetic. You learned to dim it. Now you're learning to turn it back on. Not for external validation, though that will come, for yourself. Because living as a forgettable version of yourself is a slow death. Because you're tired of being erased. Because you have things to say and do and create and contribute. And none of it matters if no one remembers you were here. Because you want to look back on your life and know that you were fully alive, fully present, fully yourself. That's the promise. That's the transformation. You unforgettable. You magnetic. You seen and remembered and sought after. Not because you're performing some artificial version of charisma, but because you've become the fullest expression of who you actually are. That person is magnetic. That person is unforgettable. That person is you. Now go be that person.